You do get a bit of a lecture here. I'm actually really interested in this stuff, but if it's hard for you to pay attention, you may actually want to take notes. No, I mean, you'll probably be able to guess what's important, but yeah, there's some stuff in here that comes in handy later.
What happened when the West Indies slaves got here?
They brought voodoo with them. The native slaves were more than enthusiastic about embracing it. It gave them power, Mr. Knight, if only in the form of a communal bond. Among the first meeting places were the Bayou St. John and the shore of Lake Pontchartrain. The early voodoos were heavy snake worshippers, worshipping the one they called the Great Zombie.
Anything else?
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
By 1817, the voodoo activities were beginning to cause fear among the white slave owners. An ordinance was passed to forbid slave gatherings except in designated public areas at designated times. The time was Sunday afternoons and the place, Congo Square. The slaves and free people of color gathered to dance simulations of their voodoo dances right in sight of Creole society. Of course, they also continued to meet in private for the real thing.
Tell me more.
There were a variety of kings and queens at first, voodoo priests and priestesses. But from about 1830, a single power emerged. This was a voodoo queen named Marie Laveau.
Okay, that's important.
Marie Laveau ruled voodoo in New Orleans for many years.
There we go, the little bling 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 bling. So that's important.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
Marie.
There were actually two Marie Laveaus, mother and daughter. Most people thought they were the same woman. Her continued youth added to the mystique. The original, the mother, was also known as Widow Paris. It was she that began the empire. When the Widow Paris began to practice, there were many voodooans in the city. By 1830, she was voodoo queen of all New Orleans.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
The Widow Paris was a hairdresser for rich Creole ladies. She also paid household servants to spy for her. Between the two, she knew everything about everyone who mattered in New Orleans. She was not above using her information to appear psychic, to intimidate, or even to blackmail.
You sound as though you admire her.
For a black woman in the mid-1800s to gain power is an incredible thing, Mr. Knight. However, she achieved it.
Tell me more.
She kept a pet snake, danced with it too. She held traditional voodoo ceremonies out by the lake. She took herself seriously, very seriously. But she was not above selling tickets for her events to curiosity seekers. She was not above using voodoo any way she could to make money, that is for certain. But if she had been in another line of work, in another age, that would have been interpreted as entrepreneurial genius rather than a sign of fraudulence.
Hey, you don't need to convince me. I admire anyone that can actually make a living.
I'll just sit at home all day and drink my coffee and think about hot black ladies.
Tell me about current voodoo.
Many people think of voodoo in terms of magic spells or gree-gree. That kind of practice is actually called hoodoo and is only a part of true voodoo. Voodoo, the religion, has a strong following in New Orleans. In fact, it is growing quite rapidly. There are several voodoo churches or temples in the city, and others all across the United States. African Americans see it as a tradition all their own. Whites, and there are many in their religion, are attracted to it because they think it is exotic. I, personally, am more interested in the history of voodoo. Some of the new movements are copying Haitian or even African voodoo. But it is the voodoo of New Orleans that I find so intriguing.
Tell me more about current voodoo.
There are many voodooians in New Orleans. They often do business selling gree-gree, telling fortunes, providing luck, and occasionally misfortune. Perhaps you would like to meet a voodooan. We refer those who seek a deeper experience with voodoo to a local practitioner, Magentia Moonbeam.
Sure, I'd love to meet her.
She lives on the corner of Orleans and Dauphine. I will call her and tell her you might stop by.
Great, thanks.
Bling, 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 bling.
Tell me more about current voodoo.
You have tapped my resources. My expertise is really historical.
Anything else historical then?
Tell me more.
I've given you as...
Okay. I would probably not ask about Malia if I were him, but since it's an option...
Do you know Malia Getty?
Should I?
She referred me to your museum.
Ah.
Many have read about our museum in the newspapers, Mr. Knight.
That's a good point.
Awkward.
Is there anything else I should know about hoodoo?
Not if your interest is primarily in voodoo. Hoodoo is of interest to those who study rural folk traditions, but it will not aid you in understanding true voodoo.
Okay.
What do you know about the voodoo murders?
The killings in the newspaper? I know that they have nothing to do with true voodoo in New Orleans.
What makes you think the voodoo murders aren't being done by local practitioners?
Voodoo is a popular boogeyman, Mr. Knight, especially in New Orleans. Anyone can pretend to use it, just as anyone can pretend to be a black belt in karate, and for the same reason, to intimidate. I know voodoo in this city, Mr. Knight, and believe me, it is not about killing. Even the police have stated that the killings have nothing to do with local voodoo.
Do you know anything about snakes?
Ah, you have perhaps noticed the museum's snake, Mr. Knight. They are beautiful creatures, do you not agree? And the tourists seem to associate them with voodoo.
Is the snake yours?
I admire the spirit of the snake, Mr. Knight, but snakes like the museums can be quite dangerous to handle.
You didn't really answer my question.
I think I did, Mr. Knight.
Probe, probe, probe.
What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
It is one of the important ceremonial nights in voodoo.
What else can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I am afraid I do not know the origins of St. John's Eve. I only know that it was a night of ritual long before voodoo came to New Orleans.
Do you have any idea what Cabri Saint-Gar means?
I fear my French is not all it should be, Mr. Knight.
Have you ever heard of a Schottenjäger?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Tell me about yourself.
Me?
Yes, if you don't mind.
What is it you wish to learn?
What kind of background in voodoo do you have?
Let us say that I cut my teeth on it, Mr. Knight. It is in my blood.
Interesting analogy.
Why did you open a voodoo museum?
The subject has fascinated me all my life, and I wanted to help preserve the cultural heritage it represents.
Do you do anything besides run the museum?
No. The museum does not make me a rich man, but my material needs are simple. I prefer to focus on my one true interest in life.
What are your own religious beliefs?
My beliefs are too personal and too complex to discuss with a layman, Mr. Knight.
Just tell me anything.
I am originally from the West Indies myself, you know.
Really? What brought you to New Orleans?
I was drawn here for personal reasons.
Actually, I can't think of a thing.
Then, let us discuss something else.
I believe I covered everything. Whew, that was a lecture. Okay.
Do these symbols mean anything to you?
No. They look like nonsense to me. Where did you get them, if I might inquire?
I saw them scribbled somewhere. Just graffiti, I guess.
I see. By the way, I forgot to warn you, Mr. Knight. The local cemeteries are quite dangerous. Muggers, vandals. I would avoid going there alone, if I were you.
Really? Thanks for the advice.
Or the threat, you know. I'm getting weird vibes from this guy.
Do these marks look familiar?
They look like the scribbling of a child to me.
Okay, thanks. Do these marks look familiar?
They look like...
Okay. Could you look at this and tell me if you recognize anything about the ritual?
This is truly offensive. This is from one of those recent killings, is it not?
Well, actually,
But the police already know that this so-called voodoo ritual is fake. Voodoo is a respectable religion. This kind of thing has nothing to do with voodoo in this city.
fine. Let's say that's true. Are you sure there's nothing about the items in this photo?
There is nothing about this sickness that I would identify as voodoo. Nothing.
Thanks for looking then.
I get the feeling I'm really pushing this guy.
Perhaps Gabriel should learn more about...
Okay. I think we are done.
Damn. I've always wanted a skeleton with a bowl on its head.
Me too. Okay. Oh yeah. Let's be mischievous.
What does this do?
Turn that thing off.
Oh, sorry.
We have air conditioning.
Yeah, I see.
And Snaky doesn't like it. Alright, time to get out of here.
Thanks a lot. Bye now.
Come back again.
As in never come back ever. Okay, alright. So when we play next time, we will check out Miss Moonbeam's place.